Hey,
Hello, hello.
can you hear me?
I can. Hold on a second. I can hear you. I got like a ridiculous heater sound. Hopefully the background noise is you don't hear it, do you?
Uh, no, not right now, but a little bit.
Okay, okay. Well, hopefully when I talk you won't hear it as much. I'm
Yeah,
like,
what is that sound?
it's a heater.
Huh? Like a space heater? Like, is it
It's
buzzing?
the what is it what?
Is it buzzing? I'm not even sure what the sound is.
It's like a shh.
Okay.
Yeah. But I realized the other day I was doing a recording for a product I was creating, like a checklist
Mm,
of here's 53 things that you need to know to get your book from idea to published.
nice.
And as I recorded it, I'm like, yes, I did it. It's amazing, 13 minutes long. And then I hit play. And when I hit play, I hear shh and you can still hear me, but
Huh.
you're not having two competing sounds that
Uh,
are going against each other. And so I would just like to say for those who created the program Screenflow, I think it's by Telestream, they had a feature in it to limit the background noise. And literally, I clicked that button and the shh went away.
wow.
And I was sitting
After.
here like, yeah, after the fact.
Wow. That's
And I was
amazing.
just like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to recreate this. This
Yeah.
is everything. Like this is because I delivered it with so much passion the first time.
Oh
The
yeah.
rehearsal would not have been as good.
Right. Yeah. Especially the frustration of having lost it already. Then you
Oh, I
just
wouldn't be able to let that go.
yeah.
That's the problem. I was like, I'm not giving them a video. That's what I'm gonna do. So I'm glad that I in the last moment when I was about to throw it all away, I remembered that was a possible feature that it had, and when I clicked on it, you can drag out the noise, and it worked out perfectly. So
Wow, that's
I'm
cool,
glad
man.
that happened, man.
It,
Sheesh, bro.
the technology for this stuff is like really wild. I don't know if I've shared with you the program I use for the podcast called
No, which one do you use?
it's called Dscript. Uh,
I think you did mention it before. Yeah.
it's so clever, man. It's like I just upload a video. I could do it for these ones, but I don't really edit much out of this at all. But in the sorry, I got a cat that's going nuts here. One sec.
You cool.
Hold on, I better move this. All right, take two.
There you go.
Uh, yeah, so this program, I upload a video and I hit transcribe, and within 5 minutes, I got a full transcript of what's happening in the video. 90%, 95% accurate, but like pretty good. And then I can say with a click of a button, remove filler words. And I click it, and suddenly all of the ums and uhs through the whole transcript, they get deleted. And not just in the transcript, but in the actual recording, the audio gets muted during that time. So it's like, whereas I would just for that feature alone, you could spend an hour clipping, splitting your clip, uh, cutting out that little or ah, stitch it back together, and do it however hundred many times there are in your video. One click, it's gone. And then you edit the rest of the footage by like selecting parts of the transcript and then deleting, or you can the advanced version you could actually overdub, like the deep fake stuff that's going on now, where you can have your voice turn it into AI, type what you want it to say. It's like, and this is like you get the sense that this is the beginning of what's possible.
That's the crazy part I was gonna ask. It's like, how do people get to that part where they can do that, right? Like where they could figure out um, like high level problem solving, like the thing where you're like, this would probably ruin it for this person. Like right now, this thing, I don't know if people could hear it, but it's driving me nuts hearing the heater. Like I'm almost like, I gotta call the person who, the landlord, and be like, you do know I shoot videos here. Like I can't have this shushing sound come up when I'm recording. But I think about like how many people, and this is probably a good topic to jump into. And just for those who are watching, first and foremost, thank you guys for watching. Like that's first, we can't be remiss about the idea that we have over 3,000 views so far at the time of this. As I look back, I'm like, and it's gradually growing, and I'm seeing the statistics because I watch them, and seeing the people like who hang on and watch us talk for as long as we do. And it's just super amazing. It's cool that our video, to be honest, I look at the stats, and the 93 to 95% of our views come from YouTube recommending it to people. And I'm wondering, what were they watching where we got recommended to be a thing to watch? I don't know what y'all watching, but I hope whatever you came from, you enjoyed what you came into with the stuff that we're talking about. But again, I just love the fact that it's something that was not all the way thought out, has been able to go and garner the viewership that it's already had. And it's crazy because I've had a YouTube channel before. I'm kind of a little bit jealous, not a little bit, that my views on this is a lot higher than the stuff that I did an extra work for that I thought was going to get more. So those to show you that not all work produces the same kind of results. The things that you work super hard for might garner results that are subpar. And the thing that you kind of didn't, not that you did subpar work, but that you were like, I didn't really think this all the way through, and you find yourself very successful with it, or that it's very promising. So again, thank you guys so much for bringing this up. But the thing that I wanted to bring up, and piggybacking on what Dscript has done, what Screenflow has done, when they think about these additional features, is this seems like they created a perfect product in a sense. How does somebody even deal with the idea of, how do I know that I've covered enough to produce it versus, well, it needs another feature. It needs another one. And then knowing, like, when do we know to stop? Because I think that spirit of perfection can be rooted in good, but don't produce anything.
Absolutely. Like a bunch of questions. I don't know. I'm amazed that anybody has the ability to like take the idea. You know what would be great for people who are editing videos is if we could have that video get turned into a transcript, and then instead of editing the video, you just edit the transcript, and that translates into the video. Like that somebody has that idea and then is able to actually write the program or software to make it happen. It's still so many leaps and bounds ahead of my, like, what I can wrestle with mentally. So that's like, I just feel like there's so many smart people who've got some of this stuff figured out. But interesting question, like when's the upper limit of innovation? What's the, like, and it's the warning that echoes throughout the ages. Sometimes innovation for innovation's sake is opening a Pandora's box of power that without the right person at the helm of this power, or the power's being discovered, we actually do a whole lot more damage, and there's a lot of like possible negative consequences. Like the nuclear bomb, for example. It's like that's innovation that got used in a really bad way. That's a good question. This is why I think even like even things like, you know, consumerism in general, like innovation for innovation's sake, often leads to new products and services, which makes people feel they need to buy more stuff. And like it's true that all the stuff we've got right now, like our electronics, our devices, they're miracle workers. They're incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing what we can do, but also at what cost? Like, what's the environmental cost, or the cost of social capital, or the cost in communities where, you know, the minerals or the resources needed to produce the circuitry in our smartphones are being mined in inhumanely, you know, in unequitable ways. And the people who are mining the stuff are treated poorly and not making good wages, and the rest of us sort of benefit from it. It's like, yeah, what is the upper limit of innovation, and when is the cost of doing something more than the benefit? Big, huge question. I'm a fan. Like some people will say, sorry, no, now I'm rambling. But some people will say, you know, climate change, we'll fix climate change. We just need to come up with the next invention to fix climate change, right? We just need to come up with the next piece of technology, that innovation that's going to let us, like a vacuum cleaner, hold it up and suck all the carbon dioxide out of the air or something, right? And some people put their faith in that the technology will develop. So whatever problem we just created, we'll find a new piece of technology to solve that problem. And then whatever problems that piece of technology creates, we'll find another piece of technology to solve that problem. That's one way of thinking. But the other way is to say, like, how did we get to this problem in the first place? Is our rampant consumerism has led to levels of CO2 in the environment and atmosphere being like way out of proportion, greenhouse gases, trapping heat. And now, so we could train people in the innovation, or we could train people to be less consumer, or more conscious as consumers, or like realign the moral compass so that the decisions you make on the ground level prevent us from getting to making these problems in the first place. A character education versus technology in education. Teach people to be better people instead of teaching people to solve the problems that we make with the stuff that we use to solve our problems. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
I think, I mean, you took it, it was like completely to a different level. I was like, man, what? Like, and I think that there is merit in there about the whole idea of like, at what cost do we continue to create, and do we go ahead and create problems so that we also have the need to have a problem solver? Right? It's like, okay, well, if I get rid of the problem, then the problem solver no longer has something to solve. So let's continue to create problems so that solving is also a thing of value, right? And so we sometimes will purposely create things incomplete with the hope that you will want to complete it, right? Like if I give it to you complete, you won't come back. It's like every device that has some features, but they don't include all of them because they want you to go and buy the next one, right? Like that idea. And I think what you said about the cost and the power of technology and you know, people making decisions versus the technology, and we're always trying to make things bigger, and then we are enamored with what the technology creates from a form of possibility, and we may be so inundated with possibilities that because we can't focus on everything. And so our focus could be possibilities, or our focus could be people. And then often it's one or the other, right? So it's like, if you're going to either take care of the people, or you're going to take care of the possibilities. And even though the possibilities will impact the people, the question is, does it impact the people without a consequence? Like, is there a cost that goes with it? So I mean, it's a great question. One that I'll be transparent and say I don't really engage in too much thinking about what is the the other effect, right? I think of it from the consumer perspective of the benefits that I will receive, not really thinking about who is it a detriment to that
Mm-hmm.
I was able to have that benefit, right? It's like I don't care who I have to step on to get to the next level, as long as I got to the next level. And then, maybe if I'm lucky or bored or something, I might look back and realize, ooh, snap, I stepped on you. I'm sorry, right? Like that's something that can happen in the go get world,
Mm-hmm.
that we easily live in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a great point. And again, like I love about these conversations is you just never know where it's going to take. It's like almost like a whose line is it anyway kind of thing / motivational, inspirational wisdom stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. The reason why I brought it up is because I think that there is this paralysis by analysis thing that can happen with perfection. And as you were talking, I was trying to think about like how can I practically tell somebody when to stop or how to look at it from a different perspective.
Mm.
And I think if you look at it from the right perspective, it might give you some type of peace in the pursuit of perfection.
Mm.
Again, I use the word pursuit, not the obtaining of it, because I don't think you can obtain it.
Right.
But the idea of the perfection of like, how do I know how far to go? I would say, and just wanted to see what's your thoughts on this. I would say that if you're trying to seek perfection and change, and your vantage point is in the future, what happens is you'll never stop.
Mm.
If you're looking forward, if you're looking to perfect something, looking from behind you is called improvement,
Mm.
right? So it's like so all you have to do is take what was yesterday and make it better today. But
Right.
when you're trying to improve the tomorrow, you skip today.
Mm.
And the tomorrow, that's endless.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're saying when you're focused, if you're future focused, you're always going to be chasing perfection, some idea of what that will be. Whereas if you look at what you've done, you can improve it because you can see where it needs improving. You can see where its flaws are, where it's weak, and
Right. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. I think when we think about it from here's the me being future focused, I'm trying to improve something that's not actually a thing.
right, right,
Versus the other thing is like when it's done, the feedback gives you the instructions essentially to create what is now the new perfect
yeah,
for
yeah,
that person based on yesterday. So if somebody tells me yesterday my computer internet is dial up and you improve that to cable and fiber optics and all this stuff, I'm like, man, that's so cool because before someone would call the house and I can't do my homework
mm-hmm.
because I had dial up. But now when you make that improvement is cool. But if you're like, well, I'm about to improve fiber optics and I'm going to make, and not even fiber optics, I'm going to improve the thing that has never been proven to be done at all yet,
Right,
then you might end up into a cycle of never actually producing anything,
yeah, yeah,
because you didn't start from something.
yeah, yeah, 100%, man. That's like, that's like this program we're sitting in right now,
Yeah.
making magic, right? I think it's so funny. So much of the theme is about creating stuff here, and while we're creating something, and we talk about like not knowing what it will look like, having unpredictable levels of success, but the way to do it is to do stuff like practice something, and you won't know where you're going to end up, but you'll end up somewhere when you do stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like have the bias for action instead of thinking. If it comes down to like I could make some more decisions about something before I act, or I can take its imperfect model in my head and just act on it. The all design thinkers will say the latter is the better option. Take the imperfect design and do it, test it, put it in the world. You'll get the feedback you need to make it better versus trying to
Mm-hmm.
make it better before it exists. I 100% agree with that. And
Yeah.
like that's the trap. I've had so many magic shows in my mind that I wanted to like produce. I know I'm going to write and direct and star in the show, and it's going to be perfect. I've got this artistic vision for what I want to create and what I want the audience to experience and how I want them to walk away feeling. And with all these things, it's like perfect model in my mind. It for years never came to be, right? And it was only when I was like, again, talking to another friend of mine who's like, how's that magic show coming on? It became a thing we would joke about because I just never did it. It's like, why don't you just take like the tricks you already do, put them together, sell tickets, call that a show. And then like you'll have an audience, right? Like you may not have this perfect vision. You might not realize that, but at least you'll learn what you need to do to get there. Like, oh yeah, duh.
Yeah.
You know? And so I did. And of course it's true.
Yeah, there's power in doing. I think there is this idea of like, hey man, I'm gonna go and do this, and I almost wonder like, what are we actually solving for when we seek perfection? Because I think when we seek perfection, there's something happening that we're not really communicating, or something that I'm trying to avoid, or something that I'm like, there's something else that's happening. Right. But I don't want you to know that it's happened to me before. So it's like, okay, well, I got to make sure everything is, all my ducks is in a row. And it's like, I almost wonder if when someone says this to me, and I had this one young lady who had told me, Geo, I can't put out my photography, my photos. And I said, why not? Like, you say you want to do this, like, why not? And she said, it's just not right. You know, it's got to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And I was like, but why? What is a perfect image? He said, I just know it has to be perfect. And so she went into things about like protecting the perfect image. Listen to this. I got to make sure that I got the copyright and the license and trademark and the right name and all these things. And what she started to describe to me was was a house that she was building, for lack of a better term, but you don't have anything to build it with. Like, it's just like, so if you have a trademark for an image that has never been produced, what is the value of the trademark?
Right.
Nothing. Right. Or here's the cool name that I came up with. And it's like, but then everybody's going to say, that's a cool name, but what exactly do you have? And so we think about this idea of protection, and I'm thinking about it and I don't know where this math thing has come up to me a lot lately, is that I feel like a lot of people are solving for Y, but they really should be solving for X. And they don't know that they should be solving for X. And so they internally believe solving for Y is the answer. And they do the right they do it correctly, but they solve for the wrong letter. And so they end up with the wrong thing. And I just want to help people not get to that point where they keep going into that, and just ask them, what's really happening here? And I think perfection is really, I've done this to myself, I've been guilty of this, that perfection is just my insurance policy. It's the only way for me to make sure that B-Love doesn't criticize it.
Right.
If it's perfect and you criticize it, something's wrong with you.
Yes.
Nothing's wrong with me. It's perfect.
Right.
Yeah. And so I what I'm trying to create is something that is free of criticism. Yeah. And we just call it perfection.
100%. I think I like this math motif. That's fun. So you think people solve the wrong problem?
Yes.
When they're trying to create something, they end up putting time and energy into, and they solve it correctly, but it doesn't serve them because, I want to start a business. I was talking about this on my podcast, actually, with a yoga teacher, yoga studio owner, Katie. So when she started her business, she had all the right things figured out. Like, she knew what she wanted to call it. She knew what her logo was going to look like. She knew what the brand colors were going to look like, but didn't prioritize finding a place for the studio, right? Or like figuring out the business plan, or like how to generate revenue, or how to sustain the revenue, marketing, and all the things that are like, no, those are probably bigger, more important problems to solve. But by focusing on, you know, the name and the colors and the aesthetics of things, it's more fun. You do, like, you need to solve those eventually, but they don't give you a yoga studio. They give you a logo and colors and a brand.
Correct.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I dig that. That I think that's absolutely the case. And I also think you nailed it, at least from my own experience. Like, where does the motive for perfectionism come from?
Yeah.
It's that, you know, that ugly fear of criticism, of being judged, of failing, whatever that looks like in somebody else's eyes. You know, it's not new, certainly not new, but it's amazing how much it rears its head. I don't know if we've talked about this. We talk about this in our book a little bit. The biggest barrier to creativity is judgment. I can't find anything that has greater impact. Like, it just takes one person to say say no once, or like to judge an idea once, to shut down an entire room of people, because they hear that judgment and they know, like, the flags go up, like, oh, I'm not saying anything in this room. This isn't safe.
Right.
Right. And when we're kids, we don't have that fear. So we're constantly, you know, producing stuff, good, bad, ugly, otherwise. So we're just constantly creating. And eventually we get into school and we learn that not all creations are equal. Some are better than others. And some people tend to create better stuff more of the time than others. And then we start to compare ourselves. And so it becomes a risk to create anything. To not be perfect is a risk.
To not be perfect is a risk. Yeah. Yeah.
Becomes a risk. And like, yeah, I struggle so hard. And like, I wrote a book about this stuff, you know, I'm in the practice of creating all the time. And I am so sensitive to feedback, like, and I want it. I'm like, here, check this out. I made this. I know it's a terrible first draft of my blog. Please read it, tear it apart, get back to me. I'm like, I say the words, but then I get the feedback, and it's sure enough torn apart, shredded, and I'm like, ouch, oh, that really stings. You know, like, why did I ask for this feedback? It hurts every single time. But if it's just like that ego, still the demons of days gone by, because actually it's not a reflection of me. I already accepted it's a bad first draft, right? That's the whole point. Like, it's not me that's being judged. It's the work that I've produced that's being judged. And the only way to make it better is to get some feedback on it.
Yeah. I think that's the part is understanding that you have the opportunity for better. I think the reality is that when you feel like, when you live in a mindset of scarcity and you think you only have one shot, then I can't mess up the shot. And I think that's the beauty. That's the part where I think a lot of people feel like they don't have the space to fail.
Right.
And so because they don't have the space, and I think that's important, is like creating rooms, projects, experiments where judgment is not present.
Yeah.
If that's what's going to be if that's what's creating the creativity, the bottleneck in creativity, then you have to remove it, like, so that people can have the opportunity to get the feedback and understand the power of it. But most people don't. And so what I would love to hear, and I don't know, I think I told you I was reading the book Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Right. And I finished it again.
Nice.
And there was a thing where a professor did an exercise, and he split his classroom into two. And I posted this on Instagram, but they flagged it for some reason and didn't let me post it. But it was this question about like quality and quantity. But anyway, so the professor divided the room into two. He said, I'm going to grade you guys differently. One group, I'm going to grade you on the picture you produce. You only have to produce one. The other group, I'm going to grade you on the many. So you can do you can do as many renditions as you want, but you have to do a lot. Like your grade is going to be judged on quantity. The other one is going to be graded on quality.
Okay.
And at the end of the semester, the professor said the group that created the better photograph was the one that was doing the quality, the quantity versus the quality. The ones who did 100 pictures, they produced a better picture than the one who had to do one perfect picture for a grade. And what he found was when he was watching the students, the ones who had to come up with one great photo never actually did work. They did a lot of research on what makes a perfect photo. The other ones who had to focus on quantity, they worked their way to a great photo by applying what they knew and then getting the feedback and then continuously engaging with it over time, and they produce a better result. So the reality when I step away from this, and Atomic Habits was talking about how do you go and do something great, it's like it's the repetitions. You just got to get your reps in. And so a lot of us think, well, tell me what's the one thing I need to do. And no one ever wants to hear, here's the 25 things you have to do. Right. Or the fact that they said that habits in the book is not so much about how much time it takes, it's how many times you did it. So it's not time, it's times.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's like over and over and over again. So if I go, and we talked about this in the previous episode about like putting things around you so you can see it a lot of times.
Yeah.
Right. And if I put 100 Post-its around, I see 100 different impulses, things that are coming to me that are telling me, yo, Geo, this is what you should be having in your life, versus someone who's like, well, I looked at it once a day for 100 days. And I might be able to go and have, well, I had more of appearances or more episodes with these things because you went and did one a day for 100 days. I saw 100 posts 5 times in that week, and now I'm at 500 and you're at 100. Right. And I'm 5 days worth of stuff and you had 100 days worth of stuff.
Yep.
And that whole part of it, when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, like it's so crazy, because I was doing an exercise once in a journal, and the exercise was for you to write down, it was like a speaking engagement thing. And what it was, and I definitely want to ask you this question and after I say this, but it was, I wrote down, I spoke 40 times this year and made an average of this amount of money per engagement. And I had to write that down, I forgot, like 100 times. Right? And I did it. And what was interesting was, as I was doing it, I didn't hit to 40, but I started to see the results come. And I was like, why is this happening? And I can't unremember how much my hand hurt writing the same thing over and over again. I try to figure out how to hack it. Like, can I just write in script and just interpret it? Kind of like doctor font, like, you know, because no one knows what they're writing, but they understand what they're writing, and somebody else does too. Even when, I don't know if you've ever been to the doctor's office where they transcribe their reports.
Oh yeah.
I'm sitting here, I think I have it on my phone somewhere where my doctor is like saying into the tape recorder the thing that's happening, and I'm like, there is no human being that understands. And I'm sitting here like, whose job is to make sense of this jibber jabber right here? Like, I like, who's doing this? And so I'm like, this is ridiculous. But I think when I'm thinking about like the repetition, the writing, the pain that I felt in my hand, that made me like, for the rest of the middle of the day, when I'm like, why does my hand hurt? Oh, you remember that exercise you did? It made it easy for me to remember the goal, because something stayed after I declared it. And I'm almost wondering, when we declare a goal, maybe it's harder to make it a reality, because once the declaration is done, the feedback from it does not last longer than the declaration. And so the exercise of the writing of the hand, I'm glad I'm bringing this up, because I'm going to apply this to a different exercise, a different goal, and do the writing again, because I did remember my hand doing something. And it almost reminded me of like when I used to be a personal trainer, there was this thing called EPOC. I don't know if you ever heard of that before. EPOC is basically like, dang, what does it stand for? It's like some exercise posts, whatever. I got to make sure that I don't mess up for my fitness people out there. What does EPOC stand for? Fitness. What does it stand for? So it's called excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So that's my level of science, guys, for physiology. If you ever like this is why I did not go to physical therapy school, right? But the idea is, if you do a certain amount of work, a certain type of workout, you will receive an elevated metabolism for 24 to 36 hours post-exercise because of the intensity of it. And so when we think about, you are very big on practice, deliberate practice as well. And I don't want to go and sexualize pain, if for lack of a better term. I'm not saying if it don't hurt, then it doesn't matter. I don't want to go and say, Geo said, right? What I'm saying is, or am I saying that? Now I'm questioning my own thought. But but I think it's just like making it real, so that it's long lasting, so that you don't deviate from it again.
Yeah. The practice is where everything stems from. Like writing, the repetition is the source of the experience. I love that study of the professor you mentioned, quantity versus quality. So
my question, that was my question to you, is like, what is your thought about it? Because people will say, I've seen it a lot, that is quality over quantity. Now the question is, do you get to quality without quantity?
I don't think so. Outright, I don't think so. Because yeah, there's so many. The way to get feedback is to produce. You don't get feedback by thinking. Like, it just isn't real. Totally. In our book, that's the first guideline of brainstorming, or brain sprouting as we call it. Quantity, not quality. And I'll stand in front of a room full of students and say, like, how many people have heard the opposite? You want quality over quantity, and everybody, right? Like, yes, and it's true. Eventually, whatever we're thinking about, or whatever we're trying to come up with ideas for, we want to come up with a really good idea eventually. That's the goal. But we don't get to the really good ideas without having tons and tons and tons of not so good, bad, or even terrible ideas. And it's like through the repetition of producing a ton of stuff that you develop the skills to come up with better ideas. You produce the better photo by taking lots of pictures. You want to be a good barber, cut lots of hair. And you're going to have, it's true for anything. Speaking is a great example of this. I used to spend hours and hours and hours typing up my scripts. And I would type and I would retype and retype. But what I was actually practicing was writing. I wasn't practicing speaking. And so when I get up in front of an audience, I'd have the script in my head, but I hadn't spoken it. And so all of the iterations, actually, I would come out looking like a novice. I just didn't look like a pro. And then I switched gears. And then now when I have a gig, it's less about the writing. It's more about the speaking. Are the words in my body? And it just takes, even one line of script. I might read it 5 different times until I get, and it takes 5 times before I go, oh, that's how I have to say it. It has to, I have to pause after this word, or I have to bring my voice up. It has to be a question. That's where it's powerful, or whatever that, the thing is.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's everything we talk about is so on brand here. It's like, it all cycles back to this, do stuff and do it a lot. And that's where you build the skills to make good stuff.
No, I agree. I mean, when you think about calling the show Making Magic, and it's like, go make it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, how do I make it magical? You make it, right? It's like, so there's an action that has to take place.
Yeah.
For that to happen. Like that's just the only way to go and do it is I'm taking action. So, I mean, I know you said you had get your reps in. I know you said you have the podcast going on and you had that, I like that yoga studio story. What have you found come up for you with the podcast? Like, as you're like doing, what has come up for you with it?
Yeah, what am I learning so far? Great question. I'm learning that it's fun. Like, I really feel blessed. I get to have conversations with inspiring people like yourself on the regular, and the feedback, the early feedback, like I was a little afraid to release the podcast because I wasn't sure how good it was as we talk about perfection, right?
Yeah.
Like this one, I actually don't feel so bad about releasing because we don't have any expectations on this, right? It's been easy to just say like, well, we hit record. We'll trim up the beginning and the end, and then let it go in the world, see what happens. That was really easy for me. Whereas this podcast, I don't have any expectations for what it will do for me for business. I mean, I really am doing it because I'm interested in recording conversations with cool people. But like, why would I share it with the world? What do I hope other people will get? Maybe they'll think it's dumb. So it took a lot to get over that hump and finally drop it. And what I learned is like, people find there's so much more value than I could have anticipated. Like all of the stuff that feels so normal to me, like the stuff we're talking about now, to be frank, I talk about this stuff all the time.
Right.
But not everybody does. And for some people, this is new.
Yeah.
And I forget that. I forget just how much the things that my world might be different from other people's. So I've learned there's like great value just in putting stuff out, and people who want to take something from it will find their way to it.
No, that's dope. Yeah, I think it's interesting when you say like, is it good enough or would anybody want to hear it? And it's the same thing I hear in my book course. Is it good enough? Had a call with someone, 24-year-old, who told me yesterday, my number one concern is this good? And it goes back to like the whole quality and quantity thing. And it goes back to like, well, how many reps did you get? And the reps will help you to have the am I good enough fade out. And I think that this is this whole imposter syndrome thing that I don't think it ever goes away. I think some of it is a little bit protecting in a sense, but at some point you kind of have to still take a leap, right? You still got to go and do that. And so I think everybody who sees someone who's very confident in their abilities, we probably didn't see them, or we may not have heard them talk about themselves minus reps.
Right.
If you hear someone, any celebrity, and you hear them speak of themselves in experience, the inexperienced version of themselves does not have confidence. Right. Like no one has confidence until repetition comes. And you're like, how do you know that the record button is going to work when you hit it? Because I've hit it mad times. Right? Like that's how I know. How do you know that this is going to go and upload to the cloud when it's done recording? Because I've done it many times before. How do I know that there's a background feature in Screenflow? Because I've seen it before. I've never used it, but I've used Screenflow so many times that in my peripheral, I know under audio, right on the bottom, there's background noise remove.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think the reality is that the repetitions will give you the confidence that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and on the journey of doing, you end up seeing a lot of other exits that you would have never thought was there in the first place. Like, it's the thing is like, hey, well, what door do I need to go through? Well, the door you need to go through requires you to go through this door first. Like, and you're like, no, but like door 17, I don't see it. Like, I know you don't see door 17. The reason you don't see door 17 is because you got to go through door 13, 14, 15, 16 to go to it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah. And I think one of the things that I've learned, I'm open to share this, is as I'm doing some self inventory to end the year, I've noticed one of my biggest flaws is I see every problem solved. When I'm trying to solve a problem or create something, I only see things from a flight level and not stairs. So what that looks like is if you say, Geo, it's on the 5th floor and I'm on the 1st floor, I only see 1st floor, 5th floor. I don't see 2nd floor, 3rd floor, 4th floor. Mm-hmm. I don't see that, and I don't see the steps that it takes to get there. Mm-hmm. So because of that, what happens is I'll jump from the 1st floor to the 5th, miss, and think something's wrong with me. Mm-hmm. And never realize that there are steps. Like I'm learning this now, like I'm 36 years old, about to be 37. And I'm like, oh, there are steps. Yeah. Oh, snap. Like it's like, but I'm thinking in leaps, and not steps. And so I think that there's something important about just getting those reps in, understanding that there are when they say there are levels to this, all levels are required. Like I'm cool with leveraging experiences of other people so that you can hopefully not repeat their mistakes and make better judgment. And maybe that from the vantage point of someone else looks like you skip steps. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that there's a difference with standing on the shoulders of others and you skipping, right? I still have to step on someone. So someone has to take the steps. Yeah. You may not have to be the one taking them literally, but just understand steps were taken.
Yeah. That's really a great metaphor, a great analogy. Flights versus steps. And even like you said, you see with first to 5th, not only are you skipping 1st to 5th, you're not seeing 2, 3, 4, but you're not seeing 1A through T, like the little steps of each flight. So there's actually not just 5, there's like however many stairs there are, and each of those steps you could like cut them in half probably if you wanted, right?
Yeah.
Really great analogy. It's the same problem for anyone who's trying to get anywhere, anyone who wants to make a change in any aspect of their life. They see the change, they see the initial condition, they see other people and assume that it happens by taking leaps, and it might, but also there's so much behind the scenes. There's so much, get your reps in. Confidence comes from preparation, as you said. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you do some speaking coaching, or at least people ask you, like, how do you speak? It's supposedly the number one fear in the world. How do you get up in front of a group and not just feel like terrified? I get students and even like people in the corporate world, after I do a gig, they'll come in and say, like, I could never do what you do. I'm terrified of being in front of a group. And I say, actually, like, so am I. I get nervous every time I do a presentation. The very first presentation I ever did, my first speech, this is probably a too much information story, but I peed myself. I was in the 4th grade and I actually peed my pants in front of the whole school because I was so overwhelmingly nervous. Wow. And like, all I can say, how do you deal with the nerves? They go away when you prepped so many times, right? If you know what you're talking about, if you've got your reps in, you have all the confidence in the world.
The
And
reps, that's huge. And the speaking thing that you said is very important. That you're reminding me of. I had to do a speech. Dang, when was this? I think it was November at the time, and my understanding. This is going to be fun. My understanding of the engagement was that I was going to be asked questions, and I just had to answer them. That's what I thought the engagement was. So I get on, we're on Zoom, there's 70 people on Zoom, and the person introduces me, and I'm waiting for the question. And so I get a little chat on the chat thing on Zoom that says, you can go whenever you're ready. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what do you mean? Like, where's the questions? Like, I am ready for the questions. Like, that's what I'm ready for. And she said, just, you could talk for 25 minutes. And now I'm sitting here like, oh, snap. Was I supposed to prepare something to say for 25 minutes and then Q&A? And now I'm like, oh, snap. I'm screwed. Like, I'm screwed. And then the topic was imposter syndrome. So the interesting thing,
that's gold.
I can't make this up. Like, it was literally like, okay, I got to talk about imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh. And I got to do 25 minutes. So now not only I have no prep in terms of how long am I talking for, it's what am I talking about, like specifically. And what was interesting was the feedback that I got from the presentation was this was by far the most well-received talk we've had the whole year.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And so somebody may ask me, well, then what did you end up speaking about? And what I did was, it goes back to the reps. I just told a story, whatever story I've told the most. That's all I did. I said, what is the thing about imposter syndrome that I just keep talking about? And what's funny is when I spoke about it, I had endless amount of content. And it came with confidence because I've already spoken it many times. So when someone says, well, I could never do what you did, I'm like, well, what do you talk about? Because if you've already talked about it, you've already done it. The question now only becomes, how do I frame it for who's in front of me? But it's not different information. It's just, how do I package it? But it's the same information.
Yeah.
And so I think anybody is like, yo, like, chances are whatever you are afraid of doing, you've done it in some capacity. It just doesn't look the same. So it's almost like you go outside and you're looking for a white car, and the car is there, but it's black.
Right.
And you're like, where's the car? And it's like, it's there. It's just you were looking for the wrong color. Right. And I think we all have experience. If you have an idea, chances are it's not the first time it hit you. It may have hit you in a certain different way. And I've coached people on this. Geo, what do I do? Am I supposed to give up on my dream? And I'm like, what if your dream was exactly what you thought it was, but you mislabeled it? At the end of the day, my mentor has helped me to discover, Geo, you're a coach. You can now, what does that look like in a certain place is that they may call you a motivational speaker, they may call you an author, they may call you a consultant, but at the core of who you are, you're a coach. And if you just because they call it different things doesn't mean that that's not who I am, right? In essence. So that's a powerful thing. But last thing before we go, I wanted to ask you, because this is a question I've been torn with, because as speakers, one of our greatest calls is to inspire people. How do you advise someone that what they aspire to do is something they should no longer do? Or do you ever have you ever found yourself to be in that position?
Where somebody has something they want to do, and I think it's not what they want to do, or like they need to pivot or shift, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So immediately the examples that pop into my mind are all of my work with students, as you know, and as some people maybe watching might know, I'm a high school teacher by training. And so most of my like leadership experience is with high school students. And a few years ago, I was a coach for students in kind of a poorer neighborhood here in Hamilton, my hometown. And students always got big dreams, but some of these students had, med school ambitions and couldn't pass their grade 10 algebra course, or like, big dreams of being a celebrity rock star, but haven't yet picked up a guitar. And what I like to do is I don't like to ever say like, you're not going to make it, because I don't know, actually. Like, I think it's important to make space for possibility, for sure. So I don't want to be the one that says you're probably not going to get into med school. But what I do say is, what do you think it takes to get into med school?
Right.
What do you think it looks like to be a rock star? And what I can say, like, the rock star example is good because I think people, it's like in all of our conversations, we talk about the work behind the scenes, right? People see the product, they don't see the process. And it's the process that gets you the product. People see a rock star jamming up on the stage, having the time of their lives, crowds cheering. It looks like they're living their best life. What you don't see is the hundreds, if not thousands, of performances in empty bars, to nobody, to like showering in gas station bathrooms while you're on the road with your van and your crew. Like, nobody sees that stuff. And I would say to students who wanted to be, celebrities, like, do you know what that really, like, what do you think happens when an actor makes a movie? Have you ever seen a film shoot? Like, how many hours of makeup does somebody have to go through, or a wardrobe? How many hours are they on set shooting? Right? It's like, it's hard work. It's not easy. And it's not what it looks like necessarily. So if you can identify those steps, maybe you decide it's not what you want to do, or you see the steps finally and you're like, oh, I got to do that. That's my advice for people. It's like, figure
I love that.
What it actually looks like.
That's so good. And it's interesting because when you say that, my dream was to be an NFL my dream originally was to be an NFL player, play professional football.
Yeah.
Then it changed to, I want to be a professional football coach, because I got into a dead end. I went to a college, they cut the football program. I didn't want to transfer.
Oh, wow.
So then after that happened, I said, okay, I'm gonna be a professional coach. So I started coaching high school. And then I watched a documentary that said, this is the life of a college football coach. And when I heard the behind the scenes, I said, I don't know if I want to be a professional football coach anymore, right? And it kind of reminded me when you said, like, how long does an actor go on set and all these different things. And so somebody may have said that you've given up on your dream. And I think the reality is that the dream was deferred. Like, it was packaged a little bit differently. And I'm still a coach. At the core of it, I wanted to help people get better. That was the reason why I loved playing football, was to go and see my teammates reach a level they didn't think was going to be possible before. Then I couldn't do that as a player, so I decided to try to do that to someone as a coach. And then I couldn't do it as a football coach, and then I ended up doing personal training. And then I couldn't do that personal training, and then I did it in business. And so it comes full circle. But at the end of the day, the number one core identity I had was to help people be better. And it was just a matter of the arena is different. The call is the same.
Yes, sir. I love that. You nailed it, right? Behind the dream, there's a reason you want it. And I want to be a rock star. Okay, what about that is appealing to you? What do you think that means? Well, I want to you know, I want to have an impact on other people. Well, okay, that's huge. You could do that as a rock star. You could do that as an author. You could do that as a, you know, a waste management professional. Like you could do that in so many different ways. And I think a really great coach helps people see what the thing they want behind the ambition really is, and then see how they can find it in other areas of their lives.
100%, man. 100%.
We were going to try to keep this one to 45, but
yeah, we went. It's not. Yeah, it's an hour. We did an hour again. But guys, listen. I think that this is. Somebody said to me the other day, "Good intentions don't equal good results." So we clearly didn't hit the result mark. But the topics was definitely relevant. I mean, I know we talked about perfection. We talked about how to tell somebody, kind of help people pivot through things, quality versus quantity, the benefits of practice, skipping steps. So I think that there's so much stuff we covered. And again, the hope is we know what we're doing, but we don't know what we're doing all the way, right? Like if someone told me your episode 2 would have 1.8K views, I'd be like, no, like why? Like I don't have the best YouTube thumbnail. You know, I don't know all the tools and apps and gadgets to go and enhance viewership. I don't know if I posted it at the right time, or I posted it on Facebook and only got 2 likes, so no one's watching it. And here's the crazy thing. I can post it on Facebook, it has 2 likes, but the reality that the content is being housed on YouTube, and YouTube has its own population. And its own framework and its own structure to get their stuff out. And so the reality is that, man, it really, if nothing else, it's helped me to understand that everything works in the environment that it's supposed to work in. Like everything works. Like it's not about like, this is not working. It's not working here.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. And I think if we started to think about, man, it works, and then start to ask another question of where does it work best? Oh my gosh, the possibilities that you can really see happen is ridiculous.
Beautiful, man. It's beautiful.
Listen,
I love what we're doing here. This is so fun.
This is good stuff, man. Good stuff. So we'll see. Hopefully people will enjoy this one, and we'll have some other things to report about how amazing this thing is continuously growing. But enjoy doing this with you, man. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thanks,
and a great holiday season. Because we'll be off next week or something. So I enjoy these things. It's gonna be weird. I'm gonna be like, yo, Dad, it's Friday, it's 12. And I'm sitting here like, I'm supposed to be saying it's Christmas. And I'm like, yeah, but something's kind of missing. Like, so I'm excited about jumping back on there again in a few weeks.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
All right, man.
Take care in the meantime.
All right, buddy.
Later.
All right, bye.